Hello, dear readers. Welcome to Novel Spotlight. This is an audiobook of the novel The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Part 39. Chapter 57. No longer here. As soon as Nora entered Oakleaf Residential Care Home, and before she had even reached the reception, she saw a fair elderly man wearing glasses whom she recognized. He was having a slightly heated conversation with a nurse who looked aspirated, like a sigh turned into a human. I really would like to go into the garden, the old man said. I'm sorry, but the garden is being used today. I just want to sit on the bench and read the newspaper. Maybe if you sign up for the gardening activity session. I don't want a gardening session. I want to call Davak. This was all a mistake. Nora had heard her old neighbor talk about his son Davak before, when he had dropped off his medication. Apparently, his son had been pushing for him to go to care home, but Mrs. Banerjee had insisted on holding on his house. Is there no way I can just... He noticed at this point he had been stared at. Mr. Banerjee? He stared at Nora, confused. Hello? Who are you? I'm Nora. You know, Nora Seed. Then, feeling too flustered to think, she added, I'm your neighbor on Bancroft Avenue. He shook his head. I think you have made a mistake, dear. I haven't lived there for 3 years. And I'm very sure you were not my neighbor. The nurse tilted his head at Mr. Banerjee, as if he was a confused puppy. Maybe you have forgotten. No, said Nora quickly, realizing her mistake. He was right. I was confused. I have memory issues sometimes. I never lived there. It was somewhere else. And someone else. I'm sorry. They resumed their conversation as Nora thought about Mr. Banerjee's front garden full of irises and foxgloves. Can I help you? She turned to look at the receptionist, a mild-mannered, red-haired man with glasses and blotched skin and a gentle Scottish accent. She told him who she was and that she had phoned earlier. He was a little confused at first. And you said you left a message. He hummed a quiet tune as he searched for her email. Yes, but on the phone. I was trying for ages to get through and I couldn't, so I eventually left a message. I emailed as well. Right, I see. Well, I'm sorry about that. Are you here to see a family member? No, Nora explained. I'm not family. I'm just someone who used to know her. She would know me, though. Her name is Mrs. Elm. Nora tried to remember the full name. Sorry, it's Louise Elm. If you told her my name, Nora Seed. She was the school librarian at Hazeldean. I just thought she might like some company. The man stopped looking at his computer and stared up at Nora with barely suppressed surprise. At first, Nora thought she had got it wrong, or Dylan had got it wrong that evening at La Catina. Or maybe that Mrs. Elm in that life had experienced a different fate in this life, though Nora didn't quite know how her own decision to work in an animal shelter would have led to a different outcome for Mrs. Elm in this life. But that made no sense, as in either life she had been in touch with the librarian since school. What's the matter? Nora asked the receptionist. I'm ever so sorry to tell you this, but Louise Elm is no longer here. Where is she? She died 3 weeks ago. At first she thought it would be an admin error. Are you sure? Yes, I'm afraid I am very sure. Oh, said Nora. She didn't really know what to say or to feel. She looked down at her tote bag and had sat beside her in the car. A bag containing the chess set she had brought to play a game with her and to keep her company. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't. You see, I haven't seen her for years. Years and years. But I heard from someone who said she was here. So sorry, the receptionist said. No worries. I just wanted to thank her for being so kind to me. She died very peacefully, he said, literally in her sleep. And Nora smiled and breathed politely away. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for looking after her. I will just go now. Bye. Chapter 58. An incident with the police. She stepped back out onto Shakespeare Road with her bag and her chest set, and she really didn't know what to do. There were tingles through her body, not quite pins and needles, more that strange, fuzzy, static feeling she had felt before when she was nearing the end of a particular existence. Trying to ignore the feeling in her body, she headed in the walk direction of the car park. She passed her old garden flat at 33A Bancroft Avenue. A man she had never seen before was taking a box of recycling out. She thought of the lovely house in Cambridge she now had and couldn't help but compare it to this shabby flat on a little sewer street. The tingle subsided a little. She passed Mr. Banerjee's house, or what had been Mr. Banerjee's house, and saw the only owned house on the street that hadn't been divided into flats, though now it looked very different. The small front lawn was overgrown, and there was no sign of the calamites or busy lilies in the pot that Nora had watered for him last summer when he had been recovering from his hip surgery. On the pavement, she noticed a couple of crumbled lager cans. She saw a woman with a blonde bob and tan skin walking towards her on the pavement with two small children in double pushchair. She looked exhausted. It was the woman she had spoken to in the newsagents the day she had decided to die. The one who had seemed happy and relaxed. Carrie Ann. She hadn't noticed Nora because one child was wailing and she was trying to pacify the distressed, red-cheeked boy by waving a plastic dinosaur in front of him. Me and Jake were like rabbits, but we got there. Two little terrors, but worth it. You know, I just feel complete. I could show you some pictures. Then Carrie Ann looked up and saw Nora. I know you, don't I? Is it Nora? Yes. Hi, Nora. Hi, Carrie Ann. You remember my name? Oh, wow. I was in awe of you in school. You seems to have it all. Did you ever make the Olympics? Yes, actually, kind of. One of me did, but it wasn't what I wanted it to be. But then, what is, right? Carrie Ann seems momentarily confused, and then her son threw the dinosaurs on the pavement, and it landed next to one of the crumbled cans. Right. Nora picked up the dinosaur, a stegosaurus, on close inspection and handed it to Carrie Ann, who smiled her gratitude and headed into the house that should have belonged to Mr. Banerjee, just as the boy descended into a full tantrum. Bye, said Nora. Yeah, bye. And Nora wondered what the difference had been. What had forced Mr. Banerjee to go to the care home he had been determined not to go to? She was the only difference between the two Mr. Banerjees. But what was the difference? What had she done? Set up an online shop? Picked up his prescription a few times? Never underestimate the big importance of small things, Mrs. Elm said. You must always remember that. She stared at her own window. She thought of herself in her route life, hovering between life and death in her bedroom, equidistant, as it were, and for the first time, Nora worried about herself as if she was actually someone else, not just another version of her, but different actual person, as though finally, through all the experience of life she now had, she had become someone who pitied her former self, not in self-pity because she was a different self now. Then someone appeared at her own window, a woman who wasn't her, holding a cat that wasn't Voltaire. This was her hope. Anyway, even as she began to feel faint and fuzzy again, she headed into town, walked down the high street. Yes, she was different now. She was stronger. She had untapped things inside her, things she might never have known about if she had never sung in an arena or fought off a polar bear or felt so much love and fear and courage. There was a commotion outside Booth's. Two boys were being arrested by police officers as a nearby store detective spoke into a walkie-talkie. She recognized one of the boys and went up to him. Leo, a police officer mentioned for her to back up. Who are you? Leo asked. Nora realized she couldn't say your piano teacher and she realized how mad it was, given the fraud contest, to say what she was about to say, but still she said it. Do you have music lessons? Leo looked down as the handcuffs were put on him. I ain't done no music lesson. His voice had lost its bravado. The police officer was frustrated now. Please, miss, leave this to us. He's a good kid, Nora told him. Please don't be too hard on him. Well, this good kid just stole 200 quid's worth from there and had also just been found to be in possession of a concealed weapon. Weapon? A knife. No, there must be some mix up. He's not that sort of kid. Hear that, the police officer said to his colleague. Lady here thinks our friend Leo Thompson isn't the kind of kid to get into trouble. The other police officer laughed. He's always in and out of bother. This one? Now please, the police officer said. Let us do our job here. Of course, said Nora. Of course. Do everything they say, Leo. He looked at her as if she had sent as a practical joke. A few years ago, his mum Doreen had come into string theory to buy her son a cheap keyboard. She had been worried about his behavior at school and he'd expressed an interest in music, and so she wanted to get him piano lessons. Nora explained she had an electric piano and could play, but had no formal teacher training. Doreen had explained she didn't have much money, but they struck a deal, and Nora had enjoyed her Tuesday evening teaching Leo the difference between major and minor, 17th chord, and thought he was a great boy, eager to learn. Doreen had seen Leo was getting caught up in the wrong set, but when he got into music, he started doing well in other things too. And suddenly he wasn't getting into trouble with teacher anymore, and he played everything from Chopin through Scott Joplin to Frank Ocean and John Legend and Rex Orange Country with the same care and commitment. Something Mrs. Elm had said on an early visit to the Midnight Library came to her. Every life contains many millions of decisions, some big, some small. But every time one decision is taking over another, the outcome differs. An irreversible variation occurs, which in turn leads to further variation. In this timeline, right now, the one where she had studied a master's at Cambridge and married Ash and had a baby, she hadn't been in string theory on the day 4 years ago when Doreen and Leo came by. In this timeline, Doreen never found a music teacher who was cheap enough, and so Leo never persisted with music for long enough to realize he had a talent. He never sat there side by side with Nora on a Tuesday evening, pursuing a passion that he extended at home, producing his own tune. Nora felt herself weaken, not just tingles and fuzziness, but something stronger, a sense of plunging into nothingness, accompanied by a brief darkening of her vision, a feeling of another Nora right there in the wings, ready to pick up where this one left off, her brain ready to fill in the gaps and have a perfectly legitimate reason to be on the day trip to Bedford and to fill in every absence as if she was here the whole time. Worried she know what it meant, she turned away from Leo and his friends as they were escorted away to the police car, the eyes of the whole of the Bedford High Street upon them, and she started to quicken her pace towards the car park. This is a good life. This is a good life. This is a good life. For the next part, stay tuned to Novel Spotlight. And please like, share and subscribe.